She didn't say it like it hurt her. She said it like a woman confirming the weather report, flat, unavoidable, and no one's fault. I don't have the drive anymore. Maybe I never did. That was it. No eye contact, no apology. Just the scrape of her spoon against the yogurt cup and the sound of my watch ticking too loud in the silence that followed. I looked at her, waiting for something, an afterthought, a softening, anything. But she didn't flinch. Her shoulders stayed relaxed, posture casual, like she just told me the dishwasher was leaking again. I didn't argue. I didn't ask what she meant. I already knew. This wasn't new. Not really. She'd been slipping for months. Emotionally, physically, intentionally. One day it was the canceling of date night because she was just so tired. The next, it was the way she started bringing her phone to bed but wouldn't let it charge on the nightstand we used to share. She stopped laughing at my jokes, stopped reaching for my hand during movies, stopped noticing when I left for work early and came home late. But this was confirmation, not confusion, not a phase, not something we'd fix with a weekend away and a hotel robe between us. I studied her for a long moment. She never looked up. So I stood, pushed my chair back slowly, and walked to the sink. I rinsed my plate, methodically, like I was trying to give my hands something to do while the rest of me tried not to fall through the floor. As the water ran, I kept replaying her voice in my head. Not what she said, but how. The absence of pain. The quiet certainty. I wasn't angry yet. Not then. I was hollow. I told myself maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she was just exhausted, or disconnected, or confused by her own distance. Maybe we'd talk more later, when the silence wasn't so loud. Maybe this wasn't what it sounded like. But that night she slept on her side of the bed without touching me once. When I turned to face her in the dark, her breathing told me she was awake. Still, she didn't move, didn't reach, didn't care that I was wide awake, staring at a ceiling I'd helped paint just 3 years earlier, back when we still talked about growing old in this house. In the morning, she was gone before I opened my eyes. Not gone. Just out running errands. But that's how it starts, isn't it? Not with a scream. Not with a suitcase. Just a slow, practiced retreat disguised as routine. And I let her walk away from me that morning, just like I had the night before. Because some part of me still wanted to believe she'd turn around. It wasn't about the lack of touch. It was about the absence of being wanted. The real wound wasn't in the quiet nights. It was in how deliberately she withheld them. A kind of rationing. As if connection was a resource she was saving for something else. Or someone. I stopped initiating after a while. Not out of spite, out of dignity. You can only knock on a locked door so many times before you stop expecting it to open. But even in withdrawal, she had expectations. The bills still needed paying. The groceries still needed stocking. She still expected dinner on the table, the oil changed in her car, the dishes washed even when she cooked nothing. She wanted partnership without presence, duty without intimacy, a roommate with a ring. And for months I played the role. I told myself marriages go through phases. I blamed stress, aging, hormone shifts, anything that would allow me to hold on to the idea that this was temporary, that the woman I married would return if I just stayed patient enough. So I became the peacekeeper, the provider, the ever-reasonable man. Even when she started responding to my messages with one-word answers, even when her compliments dried up entirely, replaced by critiques delivered in that light, casual tone she used to keep things from feeling too dramatic. I remember one Saturday morning, standing in the kitchen with 2 mugs of coffee. I'd brought her the one with almond milk. She always said it made it taste like dessert. She took the cup, sipped once, then glanced at her phone. "Thanks," she muttered. "You always remember the little things." There was no warmth behind it. Just an acknowledgement, like thanking the mailman for being on time. And still, I didn't press. I thought maybe I was overanalyzing. Maybe I was the one being sensitive. But that's the problem with slow exits. They don't shout. They just slip away quietly until you look around and realize you've been left alone in the middle of what used to be your life. That realization came fully the day I heard her on the phone. Not through a closed door. Not by snooping. Just by coming home earlier than expected. The front door was unlocked. I stepped in quietly, not out of caution, just habit. Her voice floated from the living room, light and clear. She was on speaker. "He still tries. It's sweet, I guess. But I'm just bored." A pause. Then laughter, hers, and another woman's. Her friend asked if she was going to tell me. "Why?" she said, a smile audible in her voice. He'll never leave. He's too loyal. I stood in the hallway, coat still on, heart kicking against my ribs. She was wrong. I didn't make a sound. I stood there with my keys still in hand, not breathing, not blinking, just listening to the woman I'd shared my life with, reduce me to a predictable footnote. Too loyal. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. Not cruelly, not with venom, but casually, confidently, as if she'd already run every possible outcome in her head and decided I was the safest bet to bet against. That's what stung the most. Not the betrayal itself, but the certainty that I would tolerate it. I backed out of the house without her hearing me, drove around the block until my hands stopped shaking, then came back in through the garage like nothing happened. She was in the kitchen by then, face calm, eyes bright. She asked how my day was like she hadn't just peeled back my skin over Bluetooth. I answered. I even smiled. I went through every motion she expected, played the part to perfection, because now I had something she didn't. Clarity. For months, I'd been fogged in confusion, second-guessing myself, wondering if I was failing her somehow, or if she was simply slipping into a quiet depression she didn't know how to name. But now I knew. She wasn't lost. She was just done, and not brave enough to say it. The next week, she suggested we start sleeping in separate rooms, claimed it was about sleep quality. You toss and turn a lot, she said, not unkindly, and I think we both need better rest. She was already halfway moved out of our bedroom. I noticed her nightstand was cleared, her lotions and books packed neatly in a basket. Her phone charger was gone. Her pillow, too. I agreed, of course. I even offered to take the guest room. She gave me a thankful smile, the kind you give a waiter who refills your drink before you ask. Couples therapy came next. She framed it like a noble step forward, said she didn't want to give up, without trying everything. But the minute we sat across from the counselor, I saw the performance click into place. She played the martyr, spoke with quiet detachment, wrapped her excuses in phrases like hormonal imbalance and emotional fatigue. She never raised her voice, never looked at me when she spoke. She let the therapist draw diagrams and recommend mindfulness routines, nodding thoughtfully like a woman who'd already rehearsed her exit. And I played my part too, smiled, nodded, answered sincerely, while inside I was collecting every shift, every omission, every new attempt to shape the narrative, including her social media posts, subtle at first, but unmistakable, filtered selfies with captions like, rebuilding quietly, no tags, no mention of me, just soft hints, breadcrumbs for an audience she was slowly preparing. She assumed I'd stay still. She assumed wrong. The mail came late that day. I almost didn't bother checking it, just another stack of bills, catalogs, and recycled promises. But as I flipped through the pile, a plain white envelope stood out. No return address, just one line in serif font across the top. Empowered transitions, women rebuilding life after marriage. I froze. It was addressed to her. I wasn't searching. I wasn't snooping. But there it was, bold and clinical, addressed to our shared home. I stood in the kitchen, envelope in hand, trying to decide if I had the right to open it. Then I remembered. She already decided what my role was. She called me loyal, not trustworthy, not respected, not even loved, just someone predictable enough to be disregarded. So yes, I opened it. The invoice inside was detailed. One-on-one coaching sessions, life strategy modules, a 3-month package paid in full. Date of first session, nearly 3 months ago. Long before the therapy. Long before the separate beds. Long before she pretended we were working on things. She hadn't just given up. She'd outsourced her exit. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in the guest bed, my bed now, staring at the ceiling, holding that invoice like it was a legal document that changed my citizenship. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a hurdle, a stage in her evolution. In the morning, she made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, avocado, sliced just the way I liked it. She sat across from me and talked about the upcoming therapy session as if none of this was real. As if we were just two people in a rough patch that could be ironed out by breathing exercises and emotional check-ins. I watched her smile as she sipped her coffee. Polished. Collected. Already gone. I said nothing. Because now I wasn't reacting, I was preparing. The next few days, I started moving with intention. Quiet, invisible actions. I met with a lawyer during my lunch break. I opened a separate bank account. I checked the titles on the house, the car, the investments. I called an accountant and asked questions I should have asked years ago. She thought I was too loyal to leave. But loyalty doesn't mean surrender. I watched her one evening standing by the kitchen window, texting someone with a faint smirk on her lips. I used to think that smile was mine. Now I wasn't so sure it had ever been. She assumed she'd broken me down far enough that when the moment came, I'd thank her for the closure. But she hadn't broken me. She'd just shown me where the exit was. And now I was walking toward it, quietly, strategically. With every move, I took something back. Not out of resentment, out of necessity. I waited one more week. Not because I needed more evidence. I already had enough. But because timing matters. She'd planned her exit with the precision of someone who thought she was clever. I needed mine to be cleaner, final. Something that didn't just shift the narrative but ended it outright. That Monday, I called into work and said I'd be offline for the week. Personal reasons. No one asked questions. They knew me as dependable, steady, predictable. Just like she did. I packed while she was gone. She'd started working longer hours. At least, that's what she told me. But I no longer bothered checking. It didn't matter if she was at a desk or with someone else. I'd stopped trying to follow the lie. I was building the truth. By noon, my essentials were boxed and in storage. A private mailbox was set up, a modest apartment leased under my name alone, utilities transferred, a second phone number activated. The lawyer had already reviewed the draft. It was all signed, notarized, and ready. The final piece was the envelope. I placed it on the kitchen counter. Inside, the signed separation agreement, a list of revoked financial permissions, notification of my name reclaiming full title to the car. All worded clearly, professionally, unemotionally. She wouldn't be blindsided, just caught in the moment where assumption met consequence. When she came home, I was already gone. My key left on the counter beside the envelope. No note, no plea. Just documents and finality. But I didn't vanish. I waited. I parked a few houses down, engine off, windows cracked. Watched the garage door rise. Watched her step out of the car, grocery bag in hand, expression bored and blank. She entered the house. 30 seconds passed. Then the pause. The shift. I could see her silhouette through the window, still, stiff, reading, rereading. Her head tilted slightly, mouth parted. She didn't scream. She didn't crumple. She just stood there, motionless, while the illusion collapsed around her. My phone buzzed 30 seconds later. Her name lit the screen. I let it ring out. Then it buzzed again, and again. A text this time. "What is this? Why would you do this like a thief in the night?" I didn't respond, because I hadn't stolen anything. I'd just taken back what was mine. The peace. The boundaries. The drive. She said she didn't have it anymore, so I took the keys, and left the passenger behind. The next morning, I woke up to silence I didn't have to negotiate. No cold shoulders. No forced small talk. No emotional bartering disguised as breakfast. Just quiet, clean, still, and mine. I sat on the floor of my new apartment, coffee in hand, surrounded by unpacked boxes and a view of the city that didn't ask anything from me. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel free. Not yet. I felt clear. My phone buzzed again, for missed calls from her overnight. A string of texts had followed. The first few were sharp, blaming. Then came the appeals. "We should have talked. I didn't know you were this unhappy. This isn't the way to handle things." No acknowledgement of what she said, what she planned, what she never confessed. Just shocked that I moved before she did. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because there was nothing left to explain. She'd already made her exit, just slower, quieter, behind the shield of performance. All I did was step off the stage before the final act. By noon, mutual friends started calling. Jason left a voicemail, his tone carefully neutral. "Hey man, just checking in. Heard things shifted. Let me know if you want to grab a beer or something." Translation: she's begun soft prepping the fallout. I checked her profile later that night. Public, as always. She hadn't posted the separation yet. Too soon. But the tone had shifted. A filtered picture of her coffee mug on the patio, captioned, "Some storms clear the air." A few heart emojis from her followers. A comment from one of her friends. "You've got this. You're stronger than you know." Of course. She was already rehearsing the next narrative. Strong woman. Blindsided by a husband who left without warning. quietly enduring, courageously rebuilding. A curated version of grief to hold the attention of people who never asked for the details. But the thing about silence is, when it's real, it doesn't need an audience. I stayed off social media. Didn't post. Didn't defend. I didn't need to. Because the people who mattered already knew. My brother called. Just said. About time. Even her cousin, Rachel, sent a short message. You gave her more chances than she gave you credit for. I'm sorry. That one hit different. Because Rachel had always liked her. Had always tried to believe in the version of us that once existed. But now even that belief was unraveling. The world wasn't ending. It was just finally telling the truth. I didn't track her moves after that, but they found their way back to me anyway. Small whispers, quiet updates. Not because I asked, but because she was louder than she realized. People noticed. They always do. A week after I left, I got a call from the lawyer handling the separation. She tried to contest the account closures, he said calmly. Claimed she wasn't notified. I kept my tone flat. Everything was in the envelope. Time-stamped. Signed. He paused. She knows. This is just positioning. Of course it was. Her coaching package? Terminated. Non-payment. The empowerment coach, the one whose branding promised transformation, independence, rebirth, blocked her. Services withheld until the remaining balance cleared. But I wasn't covering anything now. That stopped the moment the separation began. She tried to lease a downtown apartment. Denied. I was her co-signer. Without my income, her approval rating dropped below the line. No fallback plan. No financial autonomy. Funny how people think loyalty is weakness until it's no longer subsidizing their life. Then came the silence. She stopped calling. Stopped texting. No emails, no voicemails, not even passive-aggressive song lyrics posted to stories. Just quiet. At first, I thought maybe she was regrouping, plotting some counter-narrative. But then Jason called again, this time with more weight in his voice. She's been reaching out to people. Not asking about you. Just circling. Circling? He hesitated. Yeah. Talking like you cut contact without warning. Like she doesn't understand what happened. Says she was working on things, and you just bailed. Some people are buying it. I leaned against the wall, phone pressed to my ear. You? No, he said. I heard what she said that night. You were right to walk. There it was again. That phrase. Right to walk. Funny how many people agreed after the fact. But none of them ever said it while I was staying. While I was trying. While I was being chipped down into something quiet and obedient and selfless enough to keep her from getting bored. That's the thing about people. They wait until the house is on fire to admit they smelled smoke all along. And now the house was ashes. And she was coughing in the soot, wondering why no one handed her a fresh set of keys. There were moments, brief, sharp, when the silence felt like punishment. Mornings when I reached for my phone out of habit. Nights when I found myself staring at the empty side of the bed in my new place, knowing she was probably doing the same, but for entirely different reasons. For me, it was grief. For her, it was inconvenience. But that's when I started to understand something I hadn't dared say aloud during the marriage. Loyalty means nothing to someone who treats it like a leash. She didn't value what I gave. She expected it. Assumed I'd never reach the point where enough was enough. That I'd keep pouring, even after she'd long since stopped holding a cup. I used to think love was sacrifice. That if you just stayed steady, stayed good, stayed available, eventually the other person would find their way back. But she wasn't lost. She'd been walking away in small increments for years, relabeling withdrawal as exhaustion, detachment as honesty. And I let her. Because I was loyal. Because I wanted it to be her. Now, I don't chase those hopes anymore. I chase peace. I learned to enjoy mornings without tension, meals without the weight of silence, sleep without the dread of what version of her I'd wake up beside. The man I was in that house? He was slow to anger, quick to forgive, careful not to rock the boat, even when he was drowning. The man I'm becoming? He doesn't wait for permission to act. He doesn't plead with closed doors. He doesn't mislabel emotional depletion as maturity. I walk more now, literally. I leave my phone at home. I let the city move around me without asking anything of it. I stop trying to explain myself to people who only want to hear their version of events. Let her curate whatever image she needs. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm simply done. There's a difference. And that difference is the reason I don't miss her. Not really. I miss who I thought she was. I miss the version of us that existed in the year before things turned cold. But the version of me that stayed? He's gone, too. And I'm not bringing him back. The unraveling didn't happen all at once. It started in the comments section. A vague post, just a photo of her hand wrapped around a coffee mug, captioned, "Starting over is harder when it wasn't your choice." I wouldn't have known about it, but Rachel sent it to me. She'd stayed quiet until then, but something about that line must have hit her the wrong way. Her message was simple. "You need to see this. She's rewriting it." I clicked the link, saw the thread. Most comments were predictable. Hearts. "Stay strong, sending love." But then one broke the pattern. A single line from someone I didn't recognize. "Didn't you say you were done months before he left?" No likes. No replies. Just silence beneath it. Like even her followers didn't know how to defend that question. Control is a fragile thing when it's built on curated narratives. A week later, I heard from our former couples therapist. She reached out, not for gossip, but to forward an inquiry. My ex had requested a copy of our session notes. Apparently, she wanted proof that she'd tried. The therapist declined to take sides, but her message to me was professional, yet sharp. "Mr. Lane, I want to commend the grace with which you handled the dissolution. Many would have lashed out." I didn't respond. Grace was a side effect of clarity. Meanwhile, her friends, those who'd been neutral during the slide, began withdrawing. Quietly, subtly. One unfollowed. Another stopped liking her posts. A third, who used to host our couples for game night, texted me out of the blue. "I get it now. I'm sorry I didn't before." It wasn't vindication. It was confirmation. She'd overplayed her hand. Assumed her version of events would go unchallenged simply because I refused to fight publicly. But that's the thing about silence. When it holds its ground, people start to look closer. And when they did, they saw what I had seen in those last 6 months, something carefully staged. Something hollow. She didn't falter in public. There were no outbursts, no visible breakdowns, just fewer likes, shorter captions, and that slow unraveling realization that loyalty can't be used against someone forever. Not when the one you underestimated stops playing their part. It was late afternoon when the knock came. I wasn't expecting anyone, certainly not her. But when I opened the door, there she was. Same coat, same perfume, same carefully neutral expression she used to wear in therapy sessions when she wanted to look like the composed one. She didn't speak right away. Just stood there, holding a thin envelope like it might do the talking for her. I stepped aside without a word. Not an invitation, just space. She sat, back straight, eyes darting around the apartment like she needed to catalog the evidence of a life continuing without her. "I won't stay long," she said. I nodded. Waited. She placed the envelope on the table between us. "It's my version of everything. I needed to write it down." I looked at it but didn't reach. "I was confused," she began, voice steady but thinner than I remembered. "You always made it look so easy to stay calm. I didn't know how to say what I was feeling without making it worse." I didn't reply. "Not yet," she went on, the words more rehearsed than heartfelt. "Talked about therapy. Talked about pressure. Talked about how maybe she hadn't realized she was already leaving until it was too late to stop the momentum. Then came the line I expected. "I didn't think you'd actually walk." I studied her. Not with anger. Just accuracy. "You weren't confused. You were preparing. You just thought I wouldn't notice until it benefited you." She blinked once. "I didn't mean for it to feel like a breach of trust." I let the silence stretch long enough for her to feel it. "You didn't care how it felt," I said quietly. "You cared how it would be perceived." That landed. She looked away. "You told someone I'd never leave," I continued, voice calm. "That I was too loyal. You gambled on that. And lost." She swallowed hard. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I just wanted to say I didn't expect it to end like this." "I know," I said. And I meant it. She thought endings were something she could direct, clean, quiet, flattering. But real endings don't follow scripts. She left soon after, the envelope untouched on the table. I picked it up after the door clicked shut. Slid it into the drawer unread. Whatever her version was, I didn't need it. I had the truth. And unlike her, I wasn't rewriting it to make myself look better. She didn't try again. No more texts. No more notes. No more unannounced visits. And I didn't chase her down for closure. The truth was, I'd already lived the closing chapters, just hadn't realized I was reading the ending while still trying to write a middle that wasn't working. The weeks that followed settled into something resembling normal. I showed up for work, signed the last batch of separation papers, forwarded a few lingering bills to her new mailing address, and kept walking forward. There were no dramatic calls, no midnight confessions, just quiet. But accountability has a long echo. It finds people, even those who believe they've outrun it. I learned through a mutual acquaintance that her lease application had finally gone through, but not in the part of town she bragged about wanting. She'd downsized, started commuting further. One of her followers asked in a comment thread if she still worked with her life coach. She deleted the question. Another whisper floated back through someone I trusted. One of the friends she'd once leaned on had stopped returning her calls. Apparently, she'd finally said it, out loud. "You didn't just fall out of love," the friend told her. "You walked him to the door and made him think he forgot the way out." It wasn't rage or revenge. Just reality. Spoken plainly. That's the thing about losing someone who never made a scene. You don't notice the consequences until they show up in the mirror. In the gaps no one else is willing to fill. She'd been building a version of herself rooted in transition, reinvention, empowerment. But you can't rebuild from ruins you lit yourself, then pretend someone else struck the match. As for me, I kept rebuilding too, but not for display. No curated snapshots, no soft light captions, just small wins. A run that didn't end in exhaustion. A book finished without distraction. A weekend without dread. I hadn't healed. Not fully. But I was steady. Not waiting for apologies. Not reliving the breakdown. Just clear. And peace, I learned, isn't the absence of pain. It's knowing the pain finally has nothing left to take.